Okay, so we're going to review the homework that you had the other day, the two-step equation word problems part 1. I know there were some questions on that, so I wanted to go over this with you. So, number 1, 331 students went on a field trip. 6 buses were filled and 7 students traveled in cars. How many students were in each bus? So remember, you had to write an equation and then solve the equation. So we know there are 331 students altogether. There's 7 students that are in cars. We know there's 7 students. The rest of the students are on buses. And how many buses are there? There's 6 buses in all. So there's 6 buses filled with students. All right, so there's our equation. 6s plus 7 equals 331. So we have constants on both sides. We want to get them on one side. So let's take away the 7 from both sides. Since we're adding 7, we want to do the opposite, which is take away 7. So we take away 7 from both sides. We end up with 6s equals 324, because 331 minus 7 is 324. Then we want, remember right now we have 6s, but we only want 1s. We want to find out how many students were on one bus, not 6 buses. So we divide 6 by both sides, because remember, whatever you do on one side, you got to do on the other side. So we divide both sides by 6, and it turns out there are 54 students on one bus. Number 2 says Aaliyah had $24 to spend on 7 pencils. After buying them, she had $10. How much did each pencil cost? So she had $24 to start. She ended up, after she bought her pencils, with $10. Now we know there were 7 pencils bought, and we want to find out how much each one cost. So she started with 24 minus whatever those 7 pencils cost. She had $10 left. So there's our equation. Now you can see we have the 7c already by itself on the left-hand side of the equation. Okay, well, remember, we always want the variables on one side and the constants on the other. So let's keep the 7c where it is, and let's get that 24 to the other side. Since we're adding 24, what do? Subtract. So we subtract 24 from both sides. We end up with that negative 7c exactly where it was, and 10 minus 24 is negative 14. Now, in order to find c, remember we always want a coefficient of 1 when we're solving, we have to divide both sides by negative 7. So we end up with c equals 2. Why? Because a negative divided by a negative is a positive. 14 divided by 7 is 2. If we put that back in here just to check, $24 minus 7 times 2 is 14, so 24 minus 14 equals 10. It does check. Number 3 says the sum of 3 consecutive numbers is 72. What is the smallest of these numbers? So is 72 we know means equals 72. And we're talking about consecutive numbers. Those are uninterrupted numbers in a row, right? So like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 11, 12. Those are consecutive numbers. So our first number, whatever that number is, would be x. The second number would be one more than that. So that would be x plus 1. And the third number would be 2 more than the first one, so it would be x plus 2. So x is our first number, x plus 1 is our second number, and x plus 2 is our third number. Now we can combine those like terms to get our equation. So we have 1, 2, 3 x's, so that's 3x. 1 and 2 makes 3. So there's our equation, 3x plus 3 equals 72. Now we can solve it. Let's get the constants on the right-hand side. So since we're adding 3, we want to take away 3. And we want to do the same thing to the other side. So we end up getting 72 minus 3 is 69. 3x equals 69. Now, remember, coefficient always multiplies the variable it's next to. Since we're multiplying, we have to do the opposite to get rid of that 3, divide. 3 divided by 3 is x. 69 divided by 3 is 23. So the smallest of the 3 numbers would be 23. 23 plus 1 is 24. 23 plus 2 is 25. So if you added 23, 24, and 25 together, you should get 72. This problem is similar to number 4 with one big difference. Well, obviously, 2 big differences. A equals 48, but also the sum of 3 consecutive even numbers. So we want even numbers this time. So if the first one is even, let's say the first one, just for the sake of argument, is 2. The next even number would be 4. How do we get from 2 to 4? We have to add 2. Okay. How do we get to the next one, which is 6? 2 and 4 make 6. So if we're talking about even numbers, we want to add 2 to get the second number and 4 to get the third number. Okay, and we're assuming, of course, that the first one is an even number. There are other ways of doing this, but this is probably the easiest. And it also equals 48. Okay, so we got is 48. That's our equals 48. We can combine like terms. 1x, 2x, 3x's. 2 and 4 is 6. So there's our equation. 3x plus 6 equals 48. Now we just got to do the math. Take away the 6 from both sides. We get 42. 3x equals 42. Divide both sides by 3. 42 divided by 3 is 14. So the smallest of the three numbers is 14. Once again, if this is 14, 14 and 2 makes 16. 14 and 4 makes 18. So we've got 14, 16, and 18. If you add those up, they should come out to 48. All right, number 5, you bought a magazine for $5 and you also bought 4 erasers. You spent a total of $25. How much did the erasers cost? So we know we spent $5. There's our $5 for the magazine. And we bought 4 erasers, and what's the cost of those erasers? That's what we want to find out. We know altogether we spent $25. So there's our equation. 5 plus 4 times C equals 25. Let's get our constants on the same side. So since we're adding 5, we want to take away 5 from both sides. 25 minus 5 is 20, and we end up with that 4C on this side. Since the coefficient is 4, we're going to divide both sides by 4, and our cost ends up being 5. 20 divided by 4 is 5, so each eraser costs $5. If we put it back in, 4 times 5 is 20. 20 plus 5 is 25, so it checks. Okay, number 6 says Maria bought 7 boxes. A week later, half of all her boxes were destroyed in a fire. There are now only 22 boxes left. With how many did she start? So she had some, and she bought 7 more. And then after she bought that, half of all those together got destroyed in a fire. And now there are 22 left. So there's our equation. Okay, she had some, she bought 7 more. Half of all those got burnt, and now she's got 22 left. So since we're dividing this expression by 2, in order to undo that, we have to do the opposite. Remember, we want to multiply both sides by 2. Okay, 2 divided by 2 gives you that 1, so we get rid of our denominator that way. So we got b plus 7 on the left side of the equation. And since we're multiplying by 2 on this side, we got to do the same thing on that side. 22 times 2 is 44. Now what we got left to do is get that 7, get rid of that 7, get it on the other side. So since we're adding 7, we're going to subtract 7 from both sides. We end up getting b on this side, and 44 minus 7 is 37 on the other side. If we want to check it, 37 plus 7 is 44. Half of 44 is 22, so we know we're right. All right, number 7, Suma Lee won 40 super bouncy balls playing horseshoes at her school's game night. Later, she gave 2 to each of her friends. She only has 8 remaining. How many friends does she have? So she started with 40, and we know she's going to give 2 away to every one of her friends. And at the end, after she gives those 2 away to every one of her friends, she's going to have 8 left. So there's our equation. Started with 40, gave away 2 to each friend, and she's got 8 left. All right. So we're going to put the constants together. So 40 minus 40 on this side. We got to take away the 40 on the other side as well. That eliminates our 40, and we end up with negative 2f on this side. 8 minus 40 is negative 32 on this side. We want to get that coefficient down to 1, so we divide both sides by negative 2. F equals 16. So altogether, she has 16 friends. If we put it back in to check it, 40 minus 2 times 16 is 32. 40 minus 32 is 8, so we know we're right. Here's the final problem. Imani spent half of her weekly allowance playing mini golf. To earn extra money, her parents let her wash the car for $4. What is her weekly allowance if she ended with $12? So she got an allowance, she spent half of it, then after she spent half of it, her parents allowed her to wash the car for $4 more. So remember, she didn't spend half with the $4. The $4 came later. And after all that, she ended up with $12. Okay, so there's our equation. So since we're adding 4, we want to take away 4 from both sides. And that's going to leave us with a divided by 2 on the left-hand side, and 12 minus 4 is 8 on the other. We want to get rid of that denominator, or we can look at it this way. Since we're dividing by 2, we want to do the opposite, which is multiply by 2. If we're multiplying this side by 2, we got to multiply that side by 2. So we end up getting A equals 16. So her allowance altogether was $16. Let's see if that works. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 8 plus 4 is 12. It checks. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me or bring in any questions that you have, and we'll go over it in class.